Sorry, I thought I posted it this morning and it wasn't until third period that I realized I didn't post it to all my classes. But so today we are starting section 2. I want to point out a few different things this week. So notice your bookwork kind of jumps around and is shorter. The reason it jumps around is because I went through and just chose what problems I wanted you to do and made it shorter at the same time so that I can get better quality answers. Some of you, your answers are great and you just have a little bit less work to do. Some of you is going to take a little bit longer because I need more thoughtful answers to if you want credit, because turning in what I'm going to call garbage answers and they're not very good. And I can tell that there's a very minimal lack of effort in some cases. If you're like, is she talking to me? If you're thinking that, then it's possible. Some of you, your lack of effort is very minimal, and your grade will start reflecting that. Others, you're doing great. Keep it up. Thank you. So Tuesday, same thing. Next section, we're also doing your vocab worksheet, but the vocab worksheet is actually a form this week. I made it a Google form. I attached the worksheet here if you wanted to. I know some people prefer like hard copies. But then when you go to classwork, you will see that it is here. It's a form and it'll show you that it's out of 50 points. So it's out of 50 points on the form, but when it's typed into PowerSchool, it'll still be out of 10. So basically it'll take your score and divide it by 5. So you might end up with 7.2 points instead of your normal 10 because it is graded for accuracy. And not just completion this week. Wednesday, we're going to do some math. We're going to do a needs versus wants assignment. Thursday, we're going to start a budget, which that budget will be scored as an assessment and is due next Friday, the 19th. The 19th is the last day in this grading term. So it's kind of like the end of the semester for us, which means the grade you get after next Friday will be on your transcript, the ones that colleges can see. And then next Friday, you have your test that has to be completed by 3 p.m. for your attendance. Everything else is due next or this Friday also. So as I was saying, I'm going to go next Friday is the end of the grading term. So you have this week and next week. And that's not a lot of time, but it's plenty of time to turn your grade around either direction. There's still time to let your grade drop. Don't do that, please. But there's also still time if your grade's not where you want it to be and not where it should be, that you can turn it around because you're going to have this test, another test, and you're going to have that budget that are all scored as a test, plus these handful of assignments. So keep that in mind if you want to do well, and some of you aren't doing well and want to get your grade up. It's totally doable. You're just going to have to put in a little bit more effort. If I'm talking to you, you know I'm talking to you. With that being said, let's go ahead and start on our notes. Let me share our slideshow. So section 2 here is the basics of budgeting. So we're going to identify the purpose of a personal budget, and then we'll prepare one later on and go over record keeping methods. So first question to kind of get us in this thinking, what is the purpose of a budget? What do you think the purpose of a budget is? Okay, gonna wait for a couple of more answers. But yes, what I'm seeing so far. To live within your means, keep track of income and expenses, don't overspend. Yeah, so along those lines, and if you're not sure, that's okay. We're going to go over some of this. What is the difference between fixed expenses and variable expenses? Give examples if you can think of any. And if you're not sure, that's okay. This is something we haven't gone over, but based on the name, fixed expenses and variable expenses, I think you can figure out what they are. So what do you think the difference is? And or can you give any examples of one or the other? Yes, the 3 answers I have. Yeah, so those of you that are kind of taking a guess at it, in a couple. So fixed are things that don't change. They are the same, and variable expenses change. Or have the ability to change. Rent is actually going to be considered a fixed expense because month to month it would stay the same. Typically speaking, it might change, it might raise every year, but it's still going to be fixed for the same month. For every month, you know how much you're paying. And then I'll ask the other questions kind of as we go. So a budget is a spending and saving plan based on expected income and expenses. So the steps in preparing a budget are to first estimate your income. So you think about how much money you're going to make from your jobs, all your incomes, from any interest that you're bringing in, etc. Plan your savings. That's step 2. You want to pay yourself first. That's before you estimate your expenses at step 3. And then balance your budget for step 4. Make sure it works out and that you're not in debt. Or overspending. So the reason you want to plan your savings and pay yourself first before you estimate expenses is you want to make sure you have money put away. If you estimate your expenses, you might overspend and not leave any money for savings. That is a very common problem. So as soon as you say, okay, I'm going to make $500 this pay period, you should then say, I'm going to put $100 away. That leaves you then the extra $400 in this example for your expenses. And then balance your budget. Make sure you're not spending over $400. Sure, maybe you have to go back and say, well, really, I can only put $80 in my savings. You might have to adjust it. You don't want to but if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. But plan your savings first so that you make sure you have money left over, or so you have money for that, because oftentimes you don't have it left over. And a difference that I wanted to talk about between a budget. So this is a budget that we're going to look at here. And last week we looked at a cash flow statement. So a budget is estimating what you think you're going to make and spend, where a cash flow statement is very similar, but it's how much money you did actually make and spend. So here, that weekly column, then monthly was multiplied by 4. So we're just approximating 4 weeks per month. And then yearly is taking the month and multiplying by 12. So there's multiple sources of income. Then she puts money into her savings, and then expenses in the bottom section. And you can see the total income is equal to total savings and expenses. So the amount going out would be the same. So fixed expenses and variable expenses. So fixed expenses are costs that do not change each month, where variable expenses are costs that can go up and down each month. So fixed expenses, your rent, your car payment, your mortgage, your insurance, that could be health insurance, car insurance, home insurance. Those are going to be your fixed expenses. Most utilities, a lot of those will be variable expenses, like your PG&E, your water. Those are going to be based on how much you use. Your trash service, however, is probably a fixed expense. It doesn't change. It's every month or every 2 months, every 3 months, you get that bill, and it's the same amount. Gas in your car, that's going to be another variable expense. Gas prices are, even if you drive the same amount, gas prices are always changing. Your phone bill, that could go either way depending on what kind of plan you're on, right? If you're on a plan where it's unlimited data, unlimited everything, it's going to be the same price. But if you're on a plan where it's, the first 10 whatever gigs are free, anything over that is extra, well, then there's a chance that it becomes variable because you could go over that. So fixed and variable there. Charitable giving is the act of donating money or time to a cause in which you believe. The reason that's on here is because some people include charitable giving as part of their budget. They know they want to donate a certain amount to different places or things. And then annual expenses are expenses which occur once a year. Some insurance premiums or real estate taxes are like that. So you have to divide these by 12 to get the monthly amount to budget. So for example, say your homeowner's insurance is $5,000 for the year. Well, if I just say, hey, look, you owe me this $5,000 tomorrow, that's going to be really hard for a lot of people to just give somebody $5,000 at once. Whereas if you just put away $400 a little or so every month, that's a lot more manageable than $5,000 all at once. You save for it and then you can pay all of it at that time. So a budget analysis is going back and looking at your budget. You should have variances. That's going to be the differences between the planned amounts and the actual amounts. And we'll look at examples on the next page. And expenditures are items that you spend money on. So variances could be positive or negative. They could be in your favor or unfavorable, as we will see. So this is Andrea McCall's budget variances for August. So for her part-time work, she budgeted $120. That's how much she thought she was going to make, but she only made $110. So that's negative $10 for the dollar variance. She made $10 less than she thought she was going to make. So that's not good. So it's negative 8%, and that U means it's unfavorable. But on the next line, for her household chores, she made budgeted $40, but she made $50. Maybe she did some extra chores around the house. So she made $10 more than she thought she was going to make, which is a 25% variance, and that's in her favor. To get the percentage, and we'll do this later in the week, you take the dollar variance and divide it by the budgeted amount. So $10 divided by $40 is 25%. Looking down at expenses, gifts, she thought she was going to spend $20 on gifts. She only spent $18. That's a difference of $2, and it's in her favor, right? She had $20, she spent $18, so she has $2 left over. That's a 10% favorable variance. Anytime it's favorable or positive, it's favorable. Whereas clothes and shoes, she thought she was only going to spend $60, but really she spent $70. So that's a negative $10 or negative 17%, which is unfavorable. So if you have these unfavorable variances where you either spend more than you budgeted for or you don't make as much as you budgeted for, you have 4 options. The first and easiest option in most cases is to reduce your expenses. Cut out your Starbucks, the movies, eating out, etc. That's going to be your best option here. You could try to increase your income, get another job, or increase your pay at your current job. That could be either asking for a raise or trying to pick up more hours, but that could be difficult to do. You might not be able to get a raise. Hours might be limited. Maybe you don't have time for a second job. Oops, sorry. So if you don't have time for a second job, then what are you going to do? Well, your other option is to sell your assets, the things that are worth money. That's sad. Those are your things. You might not want to get rid of them. When the last option, which you definitely don't want to do, you don't want to go into debt. Hopefully this class will help you avoid that. So borrowing on your credit card gets you into debt, but that's tragic. Don't do it. So the problem, besides what I just mentioned with C and D here, is that those don't change your current situation. If you're not changing your expenses and reducing them or increasing your income, then you're going to repeat this cycle every month. If you sell something this month, sure, that'll cover the difference this month, but what are you going to do next month? And if you go into debt, well, now you're adding another bill because you have this credit card bill. So you have to pay this other bill, which puts you farther in the hole, which means you're just using your credit card more and more. And credit card debt is something that is not easy to get out of. So as much as it might suck to tell your friends, hey, I can't afford to go out to eat tonight, or I'm trying to save money, it's better than the alternatives. So you make your budget. You want to have good record keeping so that you can see where your variances are. Maybe you budgeted $20 because you like Starbucks, but you really spent $30 because you go every day. I don't even think $30 is enough for every day for a week, but I don't know. So record keeping methods. You could keep manual records, which is information recorded in hard copy format using paper and pen, or pencil if you're doing math. But electronic records, which I think most of us would lean to, are soft copy formats of your financial information stored on your computer, which is awesome because you can use spreadsheet software, basically Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, computer programs that you type in numbers and formulas and they do the math for you. And you can easily change them later as needed. So you could say, well, put in your budget amount, and then you could say, well, what's going to happen to my budget if I really spend this much? You can put those what if scenarios in, kind of like in class. I know people would come up and say, what happens to my grade if I get this on the test? Same thing, once you have your spreadsheet set up, what happens to my budget if I spend this much money? How's it going to hurt me? Especially if you don't really like math. Yes, you have to type the formulas in, but once they're there, you can copy and paste them. So, but there are also apps that can do it for you. The link there is old. It's, I think, from like 2016 or 2017. And in technology world, that's pretty old. I did not look to see if they have a more recent list. Mint, LearnVest, and Power Wallet are all apps that you can use for record keeping. Some of them you can scan receipts. Some of them you can link to your bank account. Some of them you have to type in manually what you spend money on. Hold on. So all of those will kind of help you keep track. Some of them will summarize for you. You spent this much money on groceries, which is awesome because if you have your budgeted amount for 150, but they summarize it and say you spent 200, well, now you need to make changes somewhere. Maybe you can change your budget. Maybe you can change your expenses and how much you're actually spending. Some bank accounts will do that for you too. They'll give you like summaries of the week or the month or the year of how you're spending your money. So the spreadsheets are awesome, especially for like long term. I know I've kept a spreadsheet, I think since 2016, of kind of all of my bills, just to see how they've changed over time. It's not my budget, but it's very similar to look at the variances, and so I know how much I am spending. That's on bills, and it's not like all my groceries and everything. I should look into one of these, but I haven't yet. But the options are out there, and you don't have to do the math if you hate math, which I know some of you do. But the spreadsheet, so this is an example. This is from your book. And while we can't see much there, you can see item or cell B21 is selected, which is the total expenses and savings. And up at the top above column B, you can see where it says equals, and it says plus B11 plus B19. So this spreadsheet is adding cells B11, that $100, and B19, the $255. And so say you go back and say, well, my lunches are really $60, not $80. You could just go change that 80 to 60, and it's going to update all of the other sums for you. So that's the benefit of doing something like this that we will start later this week. That is our last slide for today. So remember, your book work is a little bit shorter, but I'm expecting some more thorough, thoughtful answers. Not the answers that Google says necessarily. And while those somewhat could be accurate, they may not be relevant to what we are doing right now. That's all I have for you guys, unless you want to stay and talk about your grade or other questions, because some of you need to kind of get a little motivation there in that grade department. I'll see you tomorrow, unless you're sticking around.